Hi, everyone. This is Terrence Cheng. I'm the Chancellor of the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities System. I'm the host of this podcast, Office Hours. Through candid discussions, Office Hours will explore the intersection of education, leadership, and economic growth. We will hear from state, higher education, business, and industry leaders and students and faculty who will share valuable perspectives that inspire and empower listeners on their educational and professional journeys, and we will delve into the key issues impacting higher education across Connecticut. Joining me today is Carla Galaise. Carla is a student at CT State Northwestern, majoring in general studies, and she's graduating in May. She's very active on her campus. She has served as Vice President of the Student Senate, Vice President of Northwestern's Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society, a mentor in the peer-to-peer mentoring program, and she's a student worker in CT State Northwestern's financial aid office. Currently, she is interning with the Connecticut State House of Representatives, but maybe most importantly, at least to me, Carla is a regent on our Board of Regents that oversees the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities system. So, Carla is actually kind of my boss, and I'm really happy to have her here today. Carla, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, we've gotten to know each other a little bit during this past year, and I'm so admiring of so many of the things that I've learned about you in this time. So can you just tell us a little bit about your journey? Tell us about, just the things that you've gone through in life and how you've gotten to CT State and, what that's been like.
My journey to CT State has been a complicated one. That's brought me to this point. So I'm 32. I'm a non-traditional student. I started at community college back in 2016. Mm-hmm. I was in Vermont at the time. So my backstory is a little complicated, why I didn't go to college right out of high school. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a very strict religion. I grew up a Jehovah's Witness. Mm-hmm. And at the time, that group did not believe in higher education. Mm-hmm. So I was discouraged from even graduating high school.
Yeah.
So when I was 17 years old, I was actually in a forced marriage to a man much older than me. And he told me one day I was moving to Burlington, Vermont. And it's very patriarchal society. So I thought that's just what I had to do. So I went to Burlington, Vermont, and that marriage became abusive very quickly. But I was fresh out of high school. I was happy to have even graduated high school at that point.
Right.
So community college or any college was not really on the table for me mentally.
Right.
And by the time I was 19, 20, I had started forming a beautiful community in Burlington, Vermont, started fresh. But I had thought that I had aged out of college at that point because I didn't have anyone to help me with that. A few years after being in Vermont, I got engaged to a man and I ended up having my son. And I was 22, 23 at the time. I still wanted to go to college, but it wasn't, I just thought I had aged out.
Right.
So I ended up having my son, and that was really when everything changed for me.
Sure.
I realized that I had to rewrite my history to break cycles and write his.
Right.
So I ended up it took a few years to get out of that relationship. It was also an abusive relationship. That took about a year and a half to separate myself fully from that.
Right.
And that was when I discovered community college. And this was in Vermont. I just started at Community College of Vermont, taking a class or two each semester online because I had to work full time in order to support him. And I burned out. I really did. Because, I didn't have any family out there. I had a community, but I didn't know how to rely on people.
Right.
So I burned out, and I said to myself, okay, I'm just going to take a semester off. I'm going to take a break. And I ended up not going back for 2 years. So that's a big piece of advice I have for other students is just keep going. Even if it's a semester online or a class online per semester, just keep going. Fast forward a few years, 2 years, I moved back here to Connecticut to face my past. I had stepped away from a really great job. I was in marketing at People's United Bank, and because I knew there was something I was not accomplishing that I really wanted to make happen. So I moved back to Connecticut. That was when I started at Northwestern. So I moved back. I was going to buy the house that I grew up in. And that didn't end up, I decided that wasn't the direction I wanted to go in. But that's how I found myself at Northwestern. And the last few years has been the most healing, exciting, and wonderful time of my life. So.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, thank you so much for sharing that and being very candid and open and vulnerable with us, right? Because that's not an easy thing to talk about, right? I mean, again, you've gone through a lot. You've gone through things that some folks have never experienced, could never imagine. And I just really appreciate you, giving us your story, because I think a lot of folks go through hard times, right? And you feel like you're by yourself, and you feel like you're alone, and you feel like there's no way you can do it. But I think you're living, testament to the fact that, people do it, right? And you come through the other side and you continue your journey. So it's a real testament to your strength. I mean, hell, I could end the interview right here, because, that to me is such a victory, right? It's a victory for you. And I hope you recognize that. I hope you recognize what a real accomplishment it is just to kind of do the things that you've already done, and you have so much more in front of you. But, I really appreciate that. So talk to us a little bit more about CT State Northwestern. What are you studying? When are you going to graduate? What are your hopes and dreams?
Yeah, so I'm general studies. I want to major in anthropology when I transfer, and my campus doesn't have an anthropology major. So I've loved the general studies major because I can kind of like piece together my own courses and personalize it, which has been a lot of fun, because when I first started at CT State, I wasn't sure exactly what direction I wanted to go in. Like, I started with psychology, and I was like, ooh, maybe I want to move to sociology, and I landed on anthropology. So general studies has been a lot of fun having that as a major. So I'm graduating at the end of this semester, so just a few months, which is crazy. And
congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very excited. I'm going to miss CT State Northwestern for sure. But I am also ready for the next step.
Tell us a little bit about maybe a professor or a faculty member or a staff person who's really helped shape your experience in the time you've been at CT State Northwestern.
Oh my goodness. There's been so many, but there's been a handful that have believed in me from the very start, from my very first semester, taking online courses. A few have really taken me under their wing and just saw my potential from the very beginning, because when I first came back and I was doing in-person classes, I kind of reverted back to my high school self, which is it was a very interesting experience, because I had grown so much as an adult. So to be in person and then having to raise my hand, and it was interesting, and it took a solid semester to come back into myself and like have that.
You got to get that muscle memory back, right?
Yeah, like my student self to catch up with my adult self, which was a very interesting experience, and I think happens to a lot of non-traditional students. But even from the very beginning, I had one history professor. He knows exactly who he is at Northwestern. I think he's the only one there. And from the beginning...
You can tell us who it is.
Okay.
I mean, this is a great place to promote the people who are awesome, who have helped you.
Right, exactly. Okay, it was a Professor Todd Breida at Northwestern. And from the beginning, he saw that I was feeling a little shy. And he's like, you know the answers.
Right.
And he really saw that potential in me from the very beginning. There was also, there's Christine Marchetti. She's a world religions professor. And that was an online course. And even through online, I learned so much from her, because taking a world religions class, as you can imagine with my background, was it was very complicated for me at first. And then I was kind of balancing all the emotional side of it. Like, I had not learned about any religions up until that point. And that was kind of why I put myself in this class. And she just helped me. I can't even begin to describe, like, on every level supported me. So
That's great. And I'm really glad that you've shined some light on the faculty that have influenced you, right, and helped you in this journey so far, because I think the faculty don't get enough credit, to be quite honest with you, right? We don't give them the shout out that they deserve, because a lot of faculty don't, they don't get the credit because a lot of the work that they do is not seen in the public, right? We think of them in the classroom. We don't think of them in those side conversations where they're giving the student the encouragement or they're giving the student that talk, right? That really important talk. So thanks for illuminating that.
Yeah, and all it takes is just one conversation. I can think of specific conversations that happened throughout the course of my time, and it was life-changing. Just a simple conversation has meant the world.
Do you think that as a non-traditional student, just again, someone who's older than your average college student, that, those inputs from faculty and staff had any extra impact on you? Or are there other ways that you as a non-traditional student felt like, man, CT State Northwestern is really understanding me and here for me?
Yeah, I absolutely felt support from professors and I felt understood, and I was worried about that. And to be honest, I'm worried about that wherever I go to the next university, if I'm going to feel that, because it's I felt supported and understood and seen for what I was going through. Like, I was worried at first, like, I'm a single mom. How many other non-traditional single moms are going to be there? Right. And, when I take in-person classes, there's not too many of them, but through clubs, through the mentoring program, through various outlets, I've met so many other students just like me. But going back to the professors at community college, I've kind of thought about them as like, it's almost like the nonprofit of colleges. Like, I feel like the staff and professors choose to be at community college because they care about students. They really care.
That's right.
And it's made for a really healing, enlightening experience.
I'm really glad you said that too, because I think you're exactly right that many of our faculty choose to be at community college or they choose to be at a public regional university. And we have some of the strongest faculty there are, but they want to be in these places. They want to work with our students. And I love that. I've felt like that in my career too, where, you can take your shot in other places, but you really find your home and you find your passion, and that passion is serving students like you. So you mentioned that you are a single mom. I've met your son. He's wonderful, full of life and just has the best smile. So talk to us a little bit about what that's like, being able to balance, right, the responsibility. It's a massive responsibility. And how has the academic and college environment been able to kind of, work with you or help you or support you? Or, have there even maybe been some challenges along the way that we need to think about as an organization?
I went through different phases being a single mom as a student. So when I first started, as I mentioned, I was working full time, taking a class or two, because I thought that's how the only way I could make school work. Being a first generation college student, I didn't even know that I could take out student loans for living expenses. So I just figured there's no way I could survive without working full time. So that I had one single conversation with another single mom who had also gone to community college in her 30s. And she just said it casually. And I was 29 at the time. And it blew my mind. I'm like, I'm 29 years old and I didn't know I could do that. So that was when I literally went home from that conversation, registered for school. And I'm like, okay, that I can invest everything in that, which was incredibly exciting for me because I'd been waiting my entire life to go to college. And I'm like, I can put everything I have into this. I can't say it's been easy. Sure. But I've had my mind in my education the entire time. And so for me, that's been incredibly rewarding. But it's hard. It's hard. I mean, I work multiple jobs. So I think the hardest part is the finances, but also like trying to balance out my time and figure out like what day is going to this. And then when I'm home, then I have sometimes conflicting projects, like my son wants to go to the park or something. And then, but I have an essay to do, and then just trying to make those decisions in the moment.
It's hard as a parent in general, right? When you're just like, let's just say you're just tired from just being an adult. And then your child says, I want to go to the park, right? And you're just like, oh man. And think of all the things you're juggling. So that's even more, right? But one of the things I'm taking away from what you've just shared with us is that maybe we as institutions and campuses can do a better job of providing a slate of information and resources, and not take anything for granted, right? I think sometimes we take things for granted that, oh, folks will know this or they'll figure it out. And I'm of the mind that we shouldn't take that for granted. We shouldn't say folks will figure it out. We should say, hey, here's information. We need to serve the students better by getting them as much information in as many ways as possible. So that's definitely something we should pursue. But you are super active on campus, right? We mentioned in the intro that you've been the VP of the Student Senate. You've worked in the financial aid office. You are a peer mentor. And so how has that viewpoint, that angle, those experiences, right, so to speak, on the other side of the table, not just as a student, but as someone who works now with students in a face-to-face manner, has that also changed your perspectives on things?
Oh, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So coming into this, I mean, it's hard to not see things from your own perspective when you come into it. Like, I got to know some students here and there and hear about other students. And I think that's hearing those other stories is kind of what inspired me to get more involved. Once I started to get to know other students, I recognized, like, I want to help. I want to help them.
Yeah.
And I kind of had to go through it piece by piece and figure it out with no support. And then I'm surrounded by other people that are also going through similar things. And they, for whatever reason, environment issues going on in their lives, that they are having difficulties reaching these resources, or they're scared to.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what sparked me wanting to get involved in Student Senate, and all the various clubs that I've participated in, from the History Club to Poetry Club to PTK. It's just, I wanted to connect students.
Since I've been with this system, it's the first opportunity I've had to work closely with community colleges and community college students, right? But I've always been a part of institutions and systems where the community college was an integral partner. But now I get to kind of learn things up close. And one of the big things is the stigma, right? There's a national stigma. There's this sense of that, community college is lesser than, right? And I'll tell you, every student that I've met, that grit, that gumption, the intellect, the sharpness, the will, tells me 100% otherwise, and that there are so many other factors out there that influence where students will end up going to school, right? Your case is a great example. So my question is, do you have any thoughts on how we can continue to fight against and eventually break that stigma? Because it drives me crazy. It makes me actually a little angry. Okay. And I would love to just hear your perspective as a student, but as a leader too. Like, how do we just continue to wear down that stigma that, community college students aren't as good?
Oh, I love that question. So I think community college students, they're very different from even the state universities or private institutions. This is a second chance, or I've heard people say it's like, for me, it's a first chance.
Yep.
And that with it brings, as you said, like, such resilience. It brings a whole bunch of other things, though. Like, a lot of people are battling mental health issues or food insecurity. I myself am facing food insecurity every day. And it's things like that. When so many community college students are in their survival mode. That's why I'm a full believer that helping students with resources is the answer. I think that stigma, it's deeply ingrained. I see it all the time. And I even feel it myself when I go to tell people where I go to school, and I'm kind of embarrassed at first, and I fight through that. And I'm like, no.
Right.
I go to community college.
Yep. This is a big part of it, though. Like, you being here, doing everything that you're doing every day. Right. And being able to share your story, that's part of breaking the stigma, in my estimation. Right. Being able to say that, look at our students, look at our alumni, look at what they do, look at what they achieve, look at the impact that they have. And so, I think a big part of it, and our job, is to help you tell your story even more loudly at a higher level, so that really starts to penetrate, right? We want that to be the narrative. We want Carla's story of perseverance and success to be the story of community colleges and, the impact that they have. So, I think you are a big part of it already. So let's talk a little bit about being on the Board of Regents. Okay. You are one of our student regents, and you've been involved now, local campus activity, but now at the system level. So tell me a little bit about why you even wanted to be on the Board of Regents and what it's been like. What's that experience been like?
Yeah, so it kind of just happened, to be honest. Like, I was elected by our student senate to be our student advisory committee representative, campus representative. And then from there, I just came forward that I'd like to run for chair. And that was how it's developed. Honestly, I didn't really know too much about it going in, but I knew that it was going to be a big learning opportunity. Throughout most of my adult life before I went back to school, I was constantly searching for learning opportunities because I was so isolated up until I was 17. Right. So I was just looking for opportunities to understand more of the world.
It's a hunger for knowledge. It's a hunger for growth.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's been the coolest thing since I've been at college is there's so much out there to take advantage of. And so this was one of those opportunities that I don't really know exactly what it's going to turn into, but I know it's some advocacy, speaking for on behalf of students that I've gotten to know personally, like hundreds and hundreds of students at various campuses. And that was a really exciting thing for me. And it seemed like a safe opportunity to explore what that looks like to represent thousands of people. And that I could represent and advocate with no worries of any repercussions, I guess, like I could just do what I felt was right. Right. And either way, I'm still graduating. So that's right. I can't. Right. So,
well, I'll tell you, I know that this year on the Board of Regents and for the system, it's been action packed. There's been a lot going on, and your voice as a student leader has really helped to shape the direction. And you've done it in a way that's really, I think, has so much integrity, and it's been really fearless. And again, it's something that I really have admired about how you've gone about doing the work. Another learning opportunity that you are currently, Carla, you're doing a lot of learning, right? You're going to be one of the most intelligent, most experienced people on the face of the earth by the time you're 40 at this rate. So pace yourself. But you are interning in the legislative office building, right? We're in the middle of, we're getting towards the end of session now. So tell us what that's like. Tell us what it's like being in the mix of the legislature, working, close to or with legislators, especially as they're trying to figure out the budget. I mean, you don't have to give us any trade secrets, but I'd love to get some of your thoughts.
Oh, it's been a fascinating experience. I've been interested in government for a long time. I didn't know in what capacity. So to be right in the middle of it, there's only so much you can learn from a textbook on this is how a bill becomes a law. But to see it all happen, and I think I went into it, I wanted to see how those relationships worked, like behind the scenes. And that's a whole other world that I knew was there, but to see it happening in real time is really cool. And to be able to sit in on some huge discussions has been absolutely fascinating. So, It's been an experience. Excellent.
So, and you are going to graduate. I think you're going to graduate with flying colors. And what does the next step look for you? What's the thought in terms of some of those next steps, to finish your baccalaureate degree? Do you have thoughts about going to a master's program down the road, or do you have thoughts of maybe going into, a career path in the next few years? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, now that I'm in school, I don't think I'm ever going to stop. So I think of Professor Kelly, who has a million different degrees. That's why I'd love to be a professor. Like, I just love the whole higher education world. Yeah. So I don't know how else to say it. I'm just going to keep going till
Good for you.
I don't want to stop. So I want to go for my doctorates. Yeah. I want to go for anthropology. I'd love to be an anthropologist. I'd love to be an author one day. I'm applying for different schools now.
you and a lot of students, so many students testified in front of the legislature this year advocating for more funding and resources for the CSCU system. What has higher education really kind of meant in terms of the trajectory of your life, right? Like when you started your higher education journey to where you are now, to where you look at it, just like give us some thoughts in terms of how you have experienced that journey and the impact that higher ed has had.
It's changed everything. It's like I was working in the nonprofit world, the corporate world. I did all kinds of things before I started at school. And just my experience at community college has I've been able to network. I've been able to meet amazing people like you, just such inspirational stories. But that's just one piece. Like it's hard to articulate.
Yeah. It's part of, right. And I agree with you because, I find myself at times also looking at, kind of where I am and what my life is. And I look at higher ed and I think of it as both luck, but also as like hard work that kind of got me here. So I worked hard enough to be lucky. And I feel like I see that in you as well. Because if anything, everything you shared with me and with us shows that you just never stop working, right? But in a good way, right? I do hope you find a way to take a break, but I think higher education is a gift, and you've clearly absorbed it, right? And you use it for every opportunity you have.
Yeah, it's definitely given me the tools that I've been searching up until this point. It's just broadened everything for me. Every single part of my life is touched on. Like and my writing skills have improved. Yeah. All those soft skills, but all the people skills. I had a lot of anxiety when I first started. Like I was afraid to speak up in class sort of thing. Right. And now I've been able to fully come out of my shell. And now I feel like the possibilities are endless. Like I have the tools now. I mean, I have a long way to go, but I know where I want.
But that's transformative, right? The transformation. And again, I've had the benefit of just seeing you and getting to know you this year. And you are definitely out of your shell. There's no shell, and I love that. I love the fact that you have such great confidence. One more question before the lightning round. So your son, okay, I mean, he obviously, and I myself am a proud parent. I know you must be a proud parent. So has he ever just kind of said anything to you about just like you and being in college and like what do you think he sees and how do you think this is kind of shaping and impacting him? I know it's hard to get into the mind of a 9 or a 10-year-old, right? But I'd be curious to just get your thoughts on that.
I was just talking with a professor about this the other day because I was telling her about when I first started, and he was very aware that I was in school. He was maybe 5 or 6. And at first I was really self-conscious, which is weird to be self-conscious in front of your own 6-year-old. But the fact that I was a single mom in community college with all that stigma, and I'm like, oh, what's he gonna be thinking about? It's had the exact opposite effect of what I thought. Because he sees me making choices. Yeah. He sees the sacrifices I make. He comes to lectures. He comes to clubs. And it's just enriched every part of his life, which has been awesome. Like we went to poetry club a couple weeks ago. He presented 4 poems in front of a bunch of college kids. And it was the coolest thing. Like he wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that.
That's
awesome. And just he has said it a lot, and he now is planning. He's like, I'm going to Yale. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like it's now higher education is just, it's like, this is what I do. This is what I'm going to do next. It's not even a question for him.
That's great. So. Well, and I hope you take a moment to, or take moments to appreciate the impact you've already, obviously you have an impact on your child every single day, but that right there, that's special. Right. The fact you've shaped his vision of the world already at such an early age to understand that, and that he will have such confidence. That's great. I love that. Okay. So, you do seem to work all the time, but do you have a favorite hobby?
Singing. I like to sing and I like to play the piano.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. What's your favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Christmas. Yeah, that was fast. Okay. What are you going to miss most when your time at CT State Northwestern is up?
The people. I mean, I've made some lifelong connections, though, that I know I'm going to stay in contact with. But I'm going to miss that community.
Yeah.
Sure.
What's the dream job for Carla?
Author and anthropologist.
And tenured professor. I'm just going to tag that on there. Yeah, a tenured professor. Okay. And last but not least, so what's the best piece of advice you're going to give to other students?
Raise your hand even when you're scared to, because if you're scared, it's probably why you should do it. There's something that you need to work through there.
That's great. That is great. That's actually really great advice. Carla, this is such a pleasure to be able to talk to you, to get to know you even more. And again, I want as many people as possible to really hear your voice and appreciate you, your journey, your work, everything you stand for. You're a real star. Your star is going to continue to rise. And I hope, CT State is going to be here to support you, and my office will be here to support you. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
So thanks for tuning in to Office Hours. I'm Terrence Cheng, Chancellor of the CSCU system. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and listen in to future episodes where we discuss why higher education should be a part of Connecticut's growth strategy with state and business leaders.